Tonight's topic is going to be circumcision, and joining me for this debate will be Molly. She was here last week, and her and I actually have differing opinions about the subject. I am pro-circumcision, and she is anti-circumcision. So I guess where I'll start off is that I wanted to concede a few points because I definitely know that some of this is a no-win situation for me. The first thing that I want to point out tonight is that I agree that circumcision is not a necessary medical procedure. Uh-oh.
Are we having problems?
I'm getting a really late play. I know what's happening here.
Okay. We're looking good on my end.
Okay, I think I got it fixed.
Okay,
I have the YouTube up. I had the YouTube channel that the live people are listening on up.
Oh, okay.
So now here we go. I'll just have to begin again. So circumcision is not a medically necessary procedure for infant boys. Most of the world does not circumcise their baby boys, and they don't seem to be having any health issues with it. The second thing that I would like to concede is that circumcision is mostly done because of a religious mandate, and secular parents don't really have to deal with that, so it's not even a valid point to make. And the third thing that I would like to say is that just because a man is not circumcised does not mean that he is not clean, and to say something like that would be an insult. So I just want to make it clear that I am not saying that. I wanted to point out that there's between 10,000 and 70,000 nerve endings in the foreskin that is removed during circumcision, and that could possibly decrease a man's sensation during masturbation and sex in his adulthood. And since circumcision is not, since circumcision is a medical procedure, it comes with certain risks, and some parents might think that those risks outweigh the benefits. But something that I wanted to point out is that, circumcision is a really hot topic in the secular community these days. And Christopher Hitchens had a really strong opinion about it. He felt that it was child abuse, and he thought that it was genital mutilation. And despite his best efforts, there's still a lot of talk about it in our community. And even though I really respect him and I really like a lot of the things that he said, and I agree with a lot of things he said, I disagree with him on this point. And it's mostly personal preference as far as I'm concerned. But I do think that there are some reasons why circumcision might be a good thing, or a parent might choose to circumcise their son. Sometimes people do it because they're put under pressure by their doctors or their friends or their family. And it's kind of a mainstay in our culture. People in America do it a lot, and we are just expected to do it. And most of the men that I have been with have been circumcised, but I have been with a few that were not. So I do have experience with both. And some parents have a hard time dealing with a baby's foreskin when he is still an infant. The foreskin can get infected because of diapers. The diapers can hold germs and bacteria and feces and urine inside and on the foreskin. And despite the parents' best efforts to keep it clean, some babies still get it infected. And then they need to have the surgery later on, the circumcision surgery later on, and the scarring can be worse, the pain can be worse, and they might opt to do the circumcision just to avoid that whole problem. This is the thing that gets everybody upset, the ick factor. And I don't think circumcision is just a man's issue. Some women, and some gay men included, prefer to have sex with circumcised men. And some of these reasons could be maybe we came across a guy that wasn't circumcised and it just turned us off and we didn't like that. Or maybe we could say that just from my experience, that's what I like because I don't like the way it looks or I don't like the way it feels. I wrote in my blog that it reminded me of those toys that we had when we were a kid, what it felt like. It was called a water snake wiggly, and it it has a certain feel, like it just slips around inside itself like infinity, and you know, the foreskin is just like forever coming up and coming down, and the way they looked also kind of is scary to me. They remind me of that monster from Tremors, you know, the one under the ground, and it was like all crazy. I might have some pictures that I can pull up later, but that's just my own personal opinion, and I don't know how much weight that holds, but it is a thing that some people like them and some people don't. And I got some feedback on Facebook that I have been socially injured because so many men are circumcised, that's what I have a preference because so many men are circumcised. And I don't know how true that is. I mean, it's acting as if I can't think for myself, but you know, he might have a point that what we determine as socially acceptable or attractive socially has a lot to do with societal norms, and that he may have a point with that. I also wanted to point out that when men get older, if they're not, like when they're elderly, and they need assistance cleaning themselves, it's once again not just a men's issue, it's a caregiver issue. And the foreskin on an elderly man can harbor lots and lots of bacteria and lots of leftover urine and stuff, and it smells very strong. You can even smell it without clothes on, and that makes it not just his issue, that makes it somebody else's too. And my husband, I asked him once, I said, if you weren't circumcised when you and I got together and I asked you to get circumcised, would you? And he said yes, but he also said that he probably would have done it before he even met me. So that leads me to believe that at least some men into their adulthoods would have wanted to be circumcised and would have probably wanted it done when they were a baby instead of when they were 21. So I don't know. I guess it's something a parent needs to decide. And how could a parent really even know, you know? So it's just a parent's decision about what they want to do. And the last point that I wanted to make that was, despite the number of nerve endings in a man's foreskin, having them removed does not seem to affect their libido or their enjoyment of sex in most cases. I've handled a lot of penises in my day, and I have never had anybody say that they didn't have a good time because they wish they still had their foreskin so that it could have felt better. I mean, that's never ever been said. But we do encourage the use of condoms, and condoms can significantly reduce a man's sensation during sex, but we don't forgo the use of condoms for that reason. So I don't know that that would be a valid reason. I mean, I think the condom negates that point. So the other thing is when Hitchens compared circumcision to genital mutilation. And people will say female genital mutilation and male circumcision are equivalent. They're the same thing. And I feel very strongly that that is not the case. There's no debate that female genital mutilation is a crime against women in our country, and it's not an apt comparison with male circumcision. It's a violent act. It's done without anesthesia and in unsanitary conditions, while a post-pubescent girl is held down and forced to have this atrocity done to her, and it's against her will. And usually it's the mothers and the female relatives who are doing it to her, and the only reason they're doing it to her is because they had it done to them. And there's one reason and one reason only for female genital mutilation, and that is to inhibit her enjoyment of sex so that she is easier to control. And I believe that that reduces her to the level of chattel, you know, cattle. I mean, it's unnecessary and it's painful, and it's not a comparison to male circumcision, at least here, because we make efforts to reduce the amount of suffering that a boy would incur by doing it as an infant. And there is no such regard for the girl's suffering when they do it when she's 13 or 14 years old, and they do it without anesthesia and with dirty machetes in the dirt, you know. So I kind of get a little bit feisty when people try to compare the two. And I do realize that sometimes, you know, boys can, you know, have a bad luck with the surgery, but it's not a significant amount of boys to use it as a reason not to do the procedure. I just think it's a parent's choice, and that's really my main point of view about it. Molly doesn't agree with me on that. Molly thinks that circumcision is a bad thing, and let's hear why.
All right. As Veda said, she and I disagree on this point, and we've had numerous out-of-hangout debates about it. For me, the main reason that I first ever thought about it was just, I guess, the logical block that I hit as a secular person. I can't think of a logical medical reason to alter a person's genitals when they're born, unless there is some kind of a medical necessity with it. Like Veda, I have experience with family members. If you're watching, you may want to duck out, with both types, with uncut and cut men. I don't have a preference personally. It just does never has come up. But it just, that was what really made me start to think about it, was just nobody can present to me a medical reason for it. People, when we posted this, Veda's blog on Facebook, got a lot of good responses. People pointed out that, you know, uncircumcised men are more likely to develop and contract HIV. Unfortunately, there's no causal proof there. I did some research on that. There's correlation, but there's a question about whether there's causation, whether that's actually because they are not circumcised. So that argument falls flat to me. I am also fiercely and vehemently anti-female genital mutilation. Yeah, it's a human rights violation. Nobody of any gender, to me, deserves to have anything done to their body without their consent. When you're a baby, if there is a medical procedure, it's sort of a no-brainer that you would have something done to your body without your consent, because you can't consent. You're a baby. But I think if you are not at the age of consent, no one should be allowed to, at the simple age of even being able to say yes or no, no one should be allowed to do something medically unnecessary to your body. To me, it comes back to a lot of folks I know say, a lot of men I know say, I don't weigh in on abortion and pro-choice debates because I don't think that I should have any rule over what happens with a woman's body and her genitals and her reproductive organs. That's kind of how I feel about circumcision. I don't think I would never demonize a parent, I don't think, for choosing to humanely circumcise their child. I personally would never do it. It just, again, it comes back to personal choice. And I think circumcision can certainly be painful later in life, but ultimately, if somebody is that committed to it, if somebody really, really wants to be circumcised, that's absolutely something that can happen later. If you get circumcised young and you decide that you didn't want that for whatever reason, please forgive my ignorance, but I don't think that there's much that you can do about that. So
yeah, it's pretty much irreversible.
Yeah.
But I think circumcision's a lot like religion. If you wait till somebody's 21 to do it, they're probably not going to want to do it.
And that's, to me, then it's like mazel tov, you know, I mean, ironically using a religious phrase, but to me, it's, if you get to 21 and you were never circumcised, yeah, you're right about the same thing with people who, you said, you know, a guy never says to you, boy, that would have been really great if only I, you know, hadn't been circumcised. I think much the same can happen in the reverse. And then at that point, it's like, great, so don't get circumcised. I think people of all genders are probably going to adjust when it comes to sexual partners. That circumcision is becoming less prevalent. It's not a trend anymore. It was sort of a trend for a while. None of the cut men that I've been with have been Jewish, for example, so it wasn't a religious consideration for them. It was definitely a cultural one with the fellows that I've been with who are uncut. It was not, this is against my religion per se. It was, to me, like circumcision and like female genital mutilation, a complicated cultural reasoning behind all of it. Elements of tradition, of religion, certainly of misogyny, perhaps even of misandry in the case of circumcision, but to dismiss one as inherently good and the other as inherently bad, it just doesn't add up to me. I mean, I can see where I think any kind of a surgery on anybody's genitals that's done dirty, I mean, that's done in a way that's against their will, I think that's horrible. Like, that's obvious. But when you really get down to just the morality of changing a person's genitalia surgically without their active consent, when you just get down to the nut of it, I don't see any huge difference. Pardon the pun. Not intentional.
So can I ask you about your personal preferences and why you prefer circumcised men or uncircumcised men to circumcised men?
I don't have a preference. I've had both. Yeah.
And neither one bothers you?
No, it's a dick, I'm catching a dick. I'm not going to complain. But no, it's just, it was a surprise the first time I encountered an uncut person, because I had only been with cut folks up till that point. And so it was sort of like, oh, wow, what do I do here? But I think I figured it out. I got rave reviews, so I can't imagine that there was anything that I was doing wrong.
Well, I've never gotten any complaints either.
Yeah.
Maybe too much teeth.
You gotta keep it in line.
Yeah. Well, when people were talking to me about it being similar to female genital mutilation, they were like, well, what if I just personally prefer her labia to be removed, or less foldy or whatever? And there actually is a surgery that women can go through to, I forget what it's called, but it's I think it's like a restorative surgery. Like, it looks like a firecracker wrapped in roast beef, and so they decide to go get that fixed up.
Firecracker wrapped in roast beef was my nickname in high school. I just want to point that out. Okay, keep going.
In high school, wow.
In high school, mama.
It took a while to get there with that. Mine is perfect and beautiful.
Yes.
No complaints about mine.
Yeah.
Well, when it comes to preference for me, I'd say that I've come across, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 guys that weren't circumcised. Mm-hmm. And they, I don't even know that it was a smell problem for me, because they were, decently clean guys. And, I've run across guys that were circumcised that, they need to go take care of that shit.
Dirty motherfuckers.
Ugh, boys, wash your junk. Especially if you're coming over to my house, because I'm pretty much a sure thing. So take care of that.
Better be ready for it.
But for me, it's mostly the way it feels. I don't like the way it feels. And someone said to me that she couldn't even notice when she was having sex that it was circumcised or not circumcised. And I've had enough experience with the boys and the D to tell you that it does not feel the same. But even men that are circumcised, and no dick is the same. And I don't think that there's any such thing as an average dick. And one guy I saw, he had the most craziest looking scars on his wang.
Nice.
And I don't know what it was from, if it was from a burn or from a botched surgery or whatever, but his skin that on a normal circumcised penis, there's less movement of the skin around the shaft.
Absolutely.
And with an uncircumcised man, there is much, much more movement of the skin up and down the shaft of their penis. And with his, there was like almost zero movability with that. And there wasn't much I could do, you know? I was like, ugh. So that was kind of unfortunate for him. And I really hope that that wasn't a botched circumcision. I don't really know what botched circumcisions look like.
No, me neither.
But then there's also the I've only heard it called head cheese. Or is smegma the same as head cheese, or is
I don't think it is. I think people think it is, but I think smegma is pre-ejaculate. I think that's what smegma actually is. But let's just call it head cheese for purposes of our discussion, because I think that applies.
Okay.
Are you uncomfortable with head cheese, Veda?
Yeah, kind of. I get easily nauseous.
Yeah.
So even just thinking of it is like, oh my God, no.
Well, and for me, it's always I've always gone with the talk sex with Sue mode when it comes to sex. And I don't mean to ever tell anybody how they should be having sex, but I think for me and my advice, a good general rule, if you're with a person with whom you can't talk about sex, then you shouldn't be having sex with that person. Now, again, I'm not trying to be imposing my beliefs on anybody, but just when it comes to issues of consent and issues of getting what you need out of sex, you have to be able to talk to the person and communicate with them and tell them, I like this, I don't like that, stop. Or in this case, you need to go clean your junk, whatever gender you are. Unless somebody's into dirty junk, go clean. If someone says, you need to go clean that, like, show me some respect.
There probably is some freaky girls out there that are into
yeah, people of all genders might like dirty junk. And as long as you're being safe, do what you want to do. Or if you're not being safe and you get off on that, whatever. But I just think you should be able to communicate with a person and say, you need to clean your dick. And if they're like, nope, then I would be like, bye, because if you're not going to respect me enough to clean off your dick, I don't really want to do it.
Oh my God. I can't even imagine. Oh.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, all right. We got a little bit off topic there, but
we knew that was going to happen.
Let's talk about all the dicks that we've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I couldn't do that because we only have an hour.
Yeah. I have to work tomorrow afternoon, so I couldn't do it either.
Right. But okay, so what, you don't mind either one.
Right.
Do you notice a difference when you are giving oral in a circumcised or an uncircumcised man? And do you notice a difference when you're having regular vaginal sex, intercourse with uncircumcised and a circumcised man?
Full disclosure, I'm a cisgender woman. I have never had penetrative sex with an uncut person. So that doesn't play into it for me. But as far as just knowing the difference, believe it or not, I'm about to get blue. To me, the biggest difference I notice when it comes to having sex with people, if you really just get down to the nut, as I mentioned, is size and shape. If it's a real biggin, then it's gonna, I gotta hunker down and get to work. If it's a little bit more petite, then it's like, okay, this is gonna be pretty easy, and I think he's gonna be pretty happy because I can really go a lot of places with this. So to me, it's a lot more about size and shape and accessibility. I mean, I've been with some guys who are pretty svelte, pretty tall and lean, and that's completely different than being with a guy who's heavier, who I've also been with. I like a bit of a variety. So to me, it's a lot more about, it's not it has very little to do with the actual condition of the penis or of the genitals in whatever someone else's case may be. I don't know. What about you? Are you a real dick-focused gal?
Yeah, I like the D.
Who doesn't?
But I like circumcised men because I like the appearance of it. I like the cute little helmet head, and I like the veininess. I guess their skin is tighter, so you can see more veins on the side, and I like the way that looks and feels. And also, have you ever noticed in porn stores or like the bookstore, the naughty bookstores or the novelty stores or whatever, I don't think I've ever seen a dildo that looked like an uncircumcised penis.
I have never realized, but I think I mean, they have to be out there, but I don't think I've ever seen one.
Well, cultures like in Europe and Asia and Africa and other places where they don't really circumcise on a regular basis like we do, I wonder if they have uncircumcised dildos in their stores.
I didn't go dildo shopping overseas.
I should have done that in preparation for this show.
Right. We just are way behind on our important research.
Oh my God, there would have been other kinds of things we would have had to do for that research.
Yeah, but
you could get like a double-headed one, and one is circumcised and one is not circumcised.
Give it a shot. Switch them off.
Oh my gosh.
So here's one. In Germany, and forgive me if this is dated information, I'm more asking it as a general question. At least for a time, may still be the case, circumcision was illegal under grounds of child abuse. Now that not only brought up issues of people like you and like trillions of parents who are saying, I want to circumcise my child, but also
what about Jewish parents
that's the other thing that brought up. Particularly in Germany, if you're legislating that something about Jewish religion is illegal, I mean, we all unfortunately remember how that turned out the last time. So it brought up a lot of questions of that. What are your thoughts on that when it comes to if somebody said to you, I want to circumcise my son, he's 13 and we've just converted to Judaism, and I think that we should circumcise him. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, I think in a secular society, we should not legislate personal autonomy. So there's a lot of issues that I feel that when it comes to your personal freedom, we shouldn't legislate that. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to circumcision, it is a parent's decision, because if they do want to do it, the best time to do it is when they're babies, because they would get the least amount of suffering. But the risk you have of doing that is that they might regret that decision later on in life. But there are circumstances where it is appropriate to legislate something as illegal that might be a common religious practice. Like, for instance, in Islam, when they can marry 9-year-old girls, in America, I don't think that if that issue was brought to a vote, that America would let that slide based on our tolerance of other religious principles, because we would have to think about the safety of the child. Mm-hmm. So if you really felt that circumcision was child abuse, and you really felt that circumcision was genital mutilation, then it would fall under the same sort of a category as marrying a 9-year-old girl, So I could see how people who are against circumcision could feel like that, like it's child abuse. Mm-hmm. But it's the motivation behind it, The motivation for circumcising a baby is to lessen his suffering, not to be uncaring, inconsequential, or intending to cause him suffering. Mm-hmm. So it's a little bit different, and I think that's why it's more socially acceptable in our country. But as far as legislating against it, I don't necessarily think that that's the right move, because there are instances where it would be a religious practice, like for Jews and whatever, and I don't think that that's a bad thing. But I do want to bring up one thing about the Jewish circumcision shit. I have read plenty of articles about babies in New York City getting herpes and some of them dying because
that's a certain sect of Judaism and a certain type of ceremony.
It's like an Orthodox.
I cannot remember the name of it. It starts with an H.
But what they do is the rabbis put their mouths on the freshly cut baby boy's penis. I don't know how this is like in a thing at all, but it is. And when they are doing that, they are transferring their herpes to the babies. And some of the babies die, and the ones that don't die have herpes for the rest of their life. And I think that that is such a horrible thing that the very first time a case of that came up, it should have been instantly made illegal to do that. I mean, that would be sexual abuse in any other situation, you know? And what's worse is that the parents are totally down to do it. They're like, oh yeah, let's do it. Let's invite grandma and grandpa and everybody else. Watch this rabbi give our baby herpes. Ugh, I'm disgusted by that. And I'm sure I'm going to get some hate for that, but that is some pretty nasty stuff. And,
well, I think almost everybody condemns that. I mean, except for people probably within that community. That's, I mean, whether or not the practice itself is acceptable is one thing, but when you're literally transferring a disease to a child, I mean, that's crazy.
I think I read that there was some sort of disclosure form that they wanted the rabbis to give to the parents or whatever. And they got their lawyers to smack that down, and that didn't even happen. Or maybe it did happen, but the rabbis are not observing that, and they're doing it anyway. Yikes. Because they keep getting more cases of it happening. And I don't know how, for some reason the number 9 is sticking in my head, that like 9 babies have died from this. So
I wouldn't be able to comment. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a really sad deal. So, and
that's not, I mean, that's a minority sect that, I mean, let's be clear that when we say rabbis, we're not talking about rabbis as a class. We are talking about several specific individuals in a very narrow, sheltered, I guess might be the word, sect of the Jewish faith. That still, sheltered makes it sound condescending, and I don't want to imply that there's nothing redeeming about these people's beliefs because they do this one thing with which I disagree. But to me, that clearly, I mean, that's, I don't know, it's sort of, it's beyond the pale at this point. Now, I want to ask you this.
That would be an instance when I would agree with making circumcision illegal.
Sure.
But because I prefer circumcised penises, I don't want it to be illegal, you know?
Yeah.
How disgusting is it that you would circumcise your child because that's what you prefer sexually? But it really isn't about sexualizing the idea of circumcision. No. It's about, okay, I think that the parents would choose to do it because it might be easier to keep the baby's penis clean and prevent infection or whatever. And that would be a mother's reason to do it. But my reason is that, like, as an adult, I prefer adult men to be circumcised. And the counterpoint to that is that it runs about 50-50 in women and gay men's preference of circumcised or uncircumcised men. So if I were to circumcise my baby, the point I'm trying to make is that he still has a 50-50 shot of finding a partner that prefers his circumcisedness to a non-circumcised. You know what I'm saying? So like the worry that was presented to me is that, well, what if the one for him wanted him uncircumcised and you circumcised him? And I'm like, you know, meh, it's a 50-50 shot.
Yeah.
And I don't really think that it would limit their options, especially here in America where most men are circumcised and it's not that big of a deal. But I do think it's becoming more and more of a trend for parents to not circumcise their children.
I think it's about 50-50 at this point, circumcised and not circumcised.
Well, that wouldn't be my experience yet.
Right, but yeah, it's certainly changed.
Like the generation of children that are going to be brought up, that generation that is being born right now in 20 years is going to be maybe 50-50 circumcised and not circumcised. But when I was talking about the 50-50 that I was talking about preference
Right.
for
Yeah. Absolutely.
circumcised or uncircumcised.
Right. I was suggesting, you said I think most men are circumcised, and I don't know. I think it's about half and half.
Yeah. Well, so we agree that it's not medically necessary.
Correct.
We agree that legislating it, or did we agree that legislating it as illegal probably isn't the best secular choice?
I
Because
am really
secularism
sticky on this
means
one.
separation of church and state. So
Right.
if we use the state to make a religious practice illegal, you know, it's a slippery slope. We're walking a fine line there, and you have to really, really, really be able to prove that it is child abuse. And I think that's an easy case with child brides in America. The age of consent, I think in most states, is 16. The legal age to get married, 18, without your parents' consent. I mean, yeah, there's a certain point when a girl's mind hasn't caught up yet to her body's maturity, and it can be damaging for her to be sexually active or exposed to it at too early, and we recognize that, and we recognize that as abuse. And I think that there's more going into that than just we don't like that religious practice or whatever. It really is in the best interest of the children. We are trying to protect the children.
Well, and now, devil's advocate here, I'm not a fan of child brides, child marriages. Let me get that right. I'm not a fan of any of that, of female genital mutilation. Again, it's about human rights to me, and that violates a human right. But I would argue, just for the sake of argument, that all your arguments about I would have my child circumcised because it might make sex more enjoyable for him. It might be cleaner. It might be, essentially, your point would be, I think it's what's best for him. And what you think is based on all of the cultural beliefs that you have. Unfortunately, I think all of those "it's what I feel" arguments could be used by somebody who wants to circumcise their daughter or marry their child off. I mean, I'm not saying it's right. I'm not at all saying it's right. But I'm saying if your only argument is, I think it's what's best, I don't see
I don't know how a person could justify circumcising their daughter. How could you justify that?
How do you justify circumcising a son?
You could justify it by saying you don't want them to suffer, so you do it as a baby. You can justify it by saying you want to. Well, if they did it later, it would hurt more for them.
But they might not want it done at all, so you're not saving suffering necessarily.
Well, I don't know. How can you ever really know? I mean, you can't really know. That's why it's just a parent's decision.
Right.
If I had enough evidence, like if I had experienced a significant amount of men who came across my path who were circumcised and regretted that for whatever reason, maybe it was a botched surgery, maybe they feel like they just don't have enough sensation in their penis that they feel like they should have, maybe they feel like they were violated because they didn't get the choice to make it themselves. I'm just not really hearing that from men that have been circumcised. Men that haven't been circumcised, because that's all they know, they say, well, I wouldn't want to be circumcised. So it's like it's a wash as far as that goes, as far as like what choice they would make. But I do agree that if we didn't circumcise them when they were babies to save them the suffering of having to do it later, there really would be no justification to do it. Because even if you were a parent and you were trying to do it because you thought that it would make cleaning the baby's penis easier, or cleaning an elderly person up, you know, and make it easier or whatever, it wouldn't be justifiable without the main reason of trying to lessen their suffering by doing it when they're young and not older. And that is the reason why female genital mutilation has no chance in hell of ever being okay with me for any reason whatsoever. Because it is not done in any way to ease or to lessen the girl's suffering. It's done to control her. It's done to make her not feel enjoyment from sex. We don't circumcise baby boys because we want to inhibit their enjoyment of sex when they're adults. That's not even close to why we do it. And I feel like that is an example of sexism right there. That if you did a female circumcision, it's done to control her. And if you do a male circumcision, you do it earlier in life, and it doesn't, it lessens their suffering, and it doesn't really affect their ability to enjoy sex as an adult. Whereas the reason for doing it for women is pretty much the exact opposite. Even the time frame that they choose to do it is opposite. They wait till the girls reach puberty to do that. You know, I think that it's apples and oranges. It's not a fair comparison. And even if I was against circumcising men, I wouldn't agree that that's a fair comparison. So if you take that whole side of the argument out, because you can't win on that because they are not comparable, then it boils down to a parent's decision. And I gave some reasons why parents might choose to do that.
I just think, again, it's getting down to, not to keep using this phrase, but getting down to the nut of it, getting down to the essential facts. You're talking about a parent's choice, which circumcision is, and also based on my experience, I don't come from a culture that engages in female circumcision. Female circumcision is also the parent's choice or an elder's choice, depending on the culture. And to me, I think if both of them result in genitals being surgically altered for no medical reason, to me, both of those are fishy things that should not be going on. Although they have so many differences. And I'm absolutely, you are absolutely right there when it comes to, it isn't as if we do it to women and we don't do it to men in this country, They're two completely different motivations, but you are still changing somebody's genitals surgically, permanently, without their consent. And it's because of a parent's choice, because of what they think is best. At their core, that's essentially what both of these arguments are, is a parent deciding it's best. And as long as that's the measure, I can't say yes to one and no to the other.
So you can't say yes to one or no. I can't say yes to one or no. So who wins?
I thought you could say yes to male circumcision and no to female genital mutilation.
Oh, well, we can both say no to female genital mutilation.
Right, yeah.
That's a wash. But I can give a couple of, I don't know, maybe reasons why parents might choose to do that. The cleanliness is one of them. It's just easier for the parents to clean. So people will say, oh, hold up. This is a man's issue only. This is not a woman's issue. Like we claim as feminists that abortion is a woman's issue only and not a man's issue. So people will say this is a man's issue. Women shouldn't be able to weigh in on it. And I gave a few reasons why that's not true. There are women who would have to deal with the effects of an uncircumcised penis, or who wouldn't like to be with a person with an uncircumcised penis. So, but maybe the guy that told me that I was a victim of social, norms, maybe he's right about that. What if we lived in a world where there was no circumcision at all? Would we even notice?
Yeah, we wouldn't even be talking about it.
I don't know. I think I might be a lesbian.
And you and I talked about this too when it comes to being the victim of who are we kidding? When it comes to being the victim of socialization, I feel like that's an argument that, in my experience, is used disproportionately against women. It came up when we were talking about the hijab today. This idea that a person is a victim of socialization. Guess what? All of you watching, me, you, every person I've ever encountered on this planet, you are a victim of socialization. Every choice you make, whether it's to wear a low-cut shirt, whether it's to wear a hijab, whether it's to buy those shoes, these shoes, walk out the house, start naked, become a lawyer, become a person who runs a company, you got socialized to do all of that. So behaving like, oh, well, Veda's she's just succumbing to this social pressure. Like, you all have, and we all do all the time. Like, we as Americans don't like to believe that we're not in control, but newsflash, study culture, study anthropology, we're not. We're socialized, and we're so subject to the way that we're raised and the things that we're surrounded by. So yeah, that argument always falls flat to me. Again, I see it used against women 10-1 that I see it used against men. Oh, you only wear that bikini because you think, because you think you have to, because you've been socialized to believe you have to.
I'll grant you that we're all victims of social norms, okay? If I lived in a culture where it was considered beautiful to stretch my neck with rings added and added and added and added until I have complete rings on my neck, and they're there when I sleep, they're there when I'm awake, I take a shower with them on. It's just what our culture does. That's probably what I would do. Or if I wanted to put a plate in my lip or stretch my earlobes out really big, or
I stuck a hole in my nose. I have holes in my ears. I made that decision.
Or the tattoos all over the face, the tribal tattoos all over the face, that sort of a thing.
I mean, we all do things. You have a tattoo. I have piercings. Like, every culture has that.
Yeah, but
one is more extreme than the other.
But I guess in our culture, we have the idea of personal autonomy, and the people who are against circumcision, they're using that personal autonomy as their main basis for that. And then they're saying that that is what makes it immoral to do, is that you're doing it to a baby. But there are plenty of cultures where they start those sorts of, changes very early in life, like the cultures where they wrap the baby's head to make it a more cone shape because that's what they believe is a beautiful shape of head. They do that when they're a baby just because their head is more soft and shapeable. So if we're going to use that as a basis of morality, then we are going to judge people across the world. We are going to say it's inhumane across the world. It's going to become a crime against humanity. And that's just not really the direction I think it's fair to go. I think if you stop at trusting a parent to try to make the best choice they can for their child, and there's an age of reason that I think certain people get to. It's not 21 or 18. I think it's probably around the age of 13. When you can start to decide, oh, okay, these are the reasons why I might want to do this. These are the reasons why I might not. You can start listening to the facts and understanding the context of things. I don't know, like maybe there's some kind of middle ground. I don't know. And I also don't know how painful it is to have a circumcision as an adult. I sort of wish we had access to someone who has had that procedure as an adult. Maybe someone out there is watching or will watch this in the future, and they can comment and let us know what that experience was like for them. And also, I would probably like to hear from some men about having had it as a baby and really regretting it as an adult. Why did you regret it? Do you feel like you're missing out on something? You said that you didn't necessarily prefer or not prefer circumcised men or whatever. I actually thought you did prefer uncircumcised men.
No.
And I was wanting to know why. So maybe there's some women out there who are like, no, I love the hoods. Let me get.
Oh, sure. I mean, part of it might be
why do you like that? Why does it make it extra special? What am I missing? Did I do something wrong?
Well, with any luck, someone will comment and tell us that hey, I love the little turtleneck and here's why. And you're going to be like, fuck, I never thought of that.
Yeah, like maybe there's some extra tricks you can do.
Yeah. All kinds of fun games.
Oh, I know, right? So what would it be like to pierce a penis that hasn't been circumcised?
You can pierce foreskin, I think, she said ignorantly. I'm not positive. I mean, you can pull it back. I mean, you can kind of So you
Yeah,
vacuum pierce
pulling and pulling and pulling all that. Yeah, and then it's like underneath all that skin. And you're like, whoa, I don't know.
I thought it was kind of cool the first time I
I
saw
don't
it. I was
know.
like,
I don't know.
what's that thing?
I don't think I could take it. I don't think I could take it. Well, we got 10 minutes left. So
right.
I guess at this point, I would like to introduce the topic for next week's show. I think that the topic I'm going to pick is forgiveness.
Okay.
I wrote a blog about forgiveness, and the reason that I started thinking about forgiveness is because of the Duggar situation, the 19 kids and counting family. They're Mormons, and they're very, very religious.
I don't think they're Mormons.
They're not Mormons?
They're just like their own sect of Christianity, yeah.
Oh, I
they're
was pretty
Christian.
sure
I mean,
they
that's
were
the point.
Mormons. Well, anyway, that isn't the main point.
Right.
They're very religious. That is part of the point.
Mm-hmm.
But he committed some sexual, he sexually abused some of his sisters, yes. To different degrees of it. But he told his parents way before it ever came out. I think they went to the police. Nothing was done about it, and there's a statute of limitations. So now that the statute of limitations has run out, there's not really much legal recourse any of the victims have. But this got exposed, and the family is facing a lot of criticism for that. And one of the main reasons they're facing criticism is because they so easily forgave him. They just came out on the news and they were like, yep, we forgive him, God forgives him, it was just a mistake, blah, 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 blah. And I am a victim of childhood sexual abuse, and I can tell you from my experience that even though the person that committed that against me got 17 years in prison, I don't feel like that was long enough, because I'm having to deal with the effects of that for my whole life. And it just seems unfair to me. And he actually went to prison for what he did. Can you imagine how the victims of the Duggar brother feel?
He not only doesn't go to prison, he lives at home with the people that he raped. I mean, you're forced to live with him. That's those parents are. And
so forgiveness came up to me because it's a religious mandate, and the parents are mandated by their religion to forgive, and the victims who are religious are mandated by religion to forgive. And Josh Duggar himself is mandated by religion to ask for forgiveness, but not from the victims of his crime, from his imaginary sky daddy. Mm-hmm. And I have a really big problem with that. I'm a secular atheist. There might be secular theists out there who think that asking forgiveness from God is enough, but I don't. And I had a problem with that. But there's a contrasting idea here. How do we, as secular folks who don't believe in God, how do we deal with the issue of forgiveness? And I wanted to talk about that next week, the comparison of religious forgiveness and the fact that it's pretty much an order that you have to give it and you have to ask for it. And then the non-religious who do not have a mandate for it, and what it's like to ask for it, what sort of effects that has on a person who's not religious and why they might want to do it, and giving forgiveness to those who have hurt us, why we might want to do that, and how we might want to go about forgiving ourselves and dealing with guilt from things that we have done and people we have hurt, and the things that keep us awake at night. And so that is going to be the topic for next week's show. And it's a little bit more serious than this week. This week was just fun and games and kind of outlining an issue. And I don't even know if we came to a decision. Who do you think won, me or you?
Who won? I don't
Let
know.
the viewers decide,
Yeah.
and they're all going to pick you. You know, they're all.
It's because they already agreed with me. I can't take any victory in
Oh
that.
my! If I have to go by the heat that I caught on Facebook, especially from the Omaha atheist group,
Oh
woo,
yeah, that
they
wasn't.
let me and Nguyen. I had a couple of hours of just steam and heat coming at me. So, yeah, for all kinds of reasons too. And I listened to
Yes.
them all, and I think that they were all really great points. And since I don't really, I mean, I concede all those points that they're making. I concede the medical necessity isn't really there, and I concede that it's not even a preference that's a majority. You know, it's just. I think it's icky, and that's not enough. You know, it's just not enough.
It's enough for you not to want it to be involved with it.
It's enough for me to say I don't want to have a partner who's uncircumcised.
Right.
It's barely enough for me to say if I had a son, would I circumcise him? And I would say yes for ease of cleaning reasons, and because I don't think that it's mutilation because we do it early to prevent suffering, and I don't think it's a significant it wouldn't significantly inhibit his pleasure as an adult. So that's not a reason to not do it in my eyes. So yeah, I probably would do it. And some parents said on the threads that I read, some parents said, I did it and I regret doing it because I did it for all the wrong reasons. I didn't really think it through. They just asked me, so I did it. Some of them said that they regretted not doing it because they came into issues later and then they had to do it and it caused worse scar tissue. And, you know, it's at a certain point, the babies that want to touch themselves. And if you do a circumcision at that point, then they're more likely to get an infection or something like that or whatever. I'm not even totally sure. I've never had children, so it's sort of,
me neither.
it's for me, because I haven't had children, really the only experience that I've had is with my own partners. And to sexualize this topic is kind of gross to some people because we're talking about babies and we don't want to sexualize the topic when we're talking about babies, but I'm talking about adults.
Right, yeah, we're not sexualizing babies. I mean, that's making a decision for what's best for your child is different than saying I prefer. I mean, that's no.
But I got attacked for that. I had people say, "How dare you? It's just you're disgusting." That's I find that disgusting that you would circumcise your son because you prefer circumcised men. No. And what I'm saying is my experience with circumcised men has led me to believe that men who are circumcised don't regret it as much as they're trying to lead me to believe. I think I have more experience. These men, you know, dudes, you have one dick, okay? And maybe you've had a few in your mouth, you know, but unless you've had one in your mouth, I'm calling shotgun on this. I think I have more experience with dicks than you do. Even if you touch yours every single day, you know, you don't even see where my hands are right now. I could have one in each hand. You know, you don't know. And I think if you lined the number of dicks that I've handled in my life end to end, they would stretch around the earth 3 times. It's a lot. There's a lot. So my experience is a fair sampling of the population, to say the least. And I've handled circumcised men, I've handled uncircumcised men, and my preference is circumcised men. And if I had a baby, I would probably circumcise him. But I will tell you this, when I started my research on this topic, I was a lot further away from not circumcising my son than I am now. Now I have a whole lot more facts, and I am less inclined to just automatically say, yes, that's the decision I would make.
Good for you.
So as far as that goes, yeah. But I still think I would, maybe.
I think that's your choice.
If I talked to a doctor and a doctor told me, no, you don't need to do it. These are the risks. This might happen. But from the risks that I read, the amount of problems is so low. I mean, it's such a routine thing that it's not a significant amount of people that have been damaged by it. So I guess I think you won. And I think that everybody else is going to think you won and whatever. But
the important thing is that we talk.
Talking about it. Yeah, and I think everybody should be talking about it. I think if you have children, you should talk to your partners. You should talk to your doctors. You should do as much research as you can and make a decision that you will feel comfortable with down the road. Because you will not feel comfortable if you just do it because you were pressured to do it. And then later on, you regret. I mean, that's not a situation you want to be in. You really want to know what you're doing with your child. And so I would say do that.
Think about it, talk about it, laugh about it, cry about it.
Yeah. And that's it. So Molly's the winner. And you won the internet. So
10 internets.
You win the internets today. And I lose. So no internets for me. Well, thank you, Molly, for coming on. And if there's anyone out there who has any thoughts that they want to share with me about forgiveness and about the Duggars and that whole situation and about what it's like to be a secular person and or an atheist or non-believer and forgiving and and if you've had experiences both, which I have, share that, and we'll talk about that next week. So, Molly, you have a great night. And
you too, my dear.
Friends and fans, I'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.